This program is powered by thevirtual.show, making your offline events virtual. Ladies and gentlemen, the host of WEBIT Virtual, Dr. Plamen Rusev.
Welcome, wonderful WEBIT community from all around the world. It's such a pleasure again to welcome you on this virtual occasion. And of course, to remind you that virtual is great, but in person, even better. So get ready for 14th, 15th of December, the Global Impact WEBIT Week, which will bring us together with a hybrid edition with many of you from all around the world, scattered at different locations, having the opportunity to get together. And hopefully, if the pandemic allows us to exchange this positive energy of being in person. Until then, though, there will be all these fascinating WEBIT virtual events. I already don't count them, starting, I believe, one of the first in the world, 4th of April, 2020, and hosting over 1.5 to 2 million of you during this year and couple of months. As usual, we are meeting you with fascinating people, with people who represent some of the brightest, bravest policymakers, people who shape legislation and make sure that we can function in a better and improving way. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you our special guest today.
Dragoş Tudorache is a member of the European Parliament and the executive president of the Plus Party in Romania. He is the chair of AIDA, Artificial Intelligence in the Digital Age Special Committee, and sits in LABE, AFAT, SADE, and the European Parliament's delegation with the United States. Dragoş began his career in 1997 as judge at the Galați Court. Between 2000 and 2005, he built and led the legal departments at the OSCE and UN missions in Kosovo. After working on justice and anti-corruption at the Commission representation in Romania, supporting the country's EU accession, he joined the Commission and subsequently qualified for leadership roles in EU institutions, managing a number of units and strategic projects such as the Schengen Information System, Visa Information System, and the establishment of EU LISA.
Artificial intelligence has no purpose in and of itself. Deploying sophisticated AI technology in agriculture, we are increasing our strategic resilience and reducing our impact on the environment. Europe's ambition must be to become a global player and a model in smart farming. Posted on my guest Twitter profile. Welcome to Mr. Dragoş Tudorache, chair of AIDA, Artificial Intelligence in Digital Age. Welcome, Dragoş. Hope you're well.
Thank you very much, Plamen. I'm very happy to be with you and with your virtual audience. And I would dare say, I also very much look forward to physical events. We've been for 1 year caught in our offices doing these sort of virtual meetings. They are great, but physical is better. So anyway, very happy to be with you today.
Absolutely, Dragoş. Well, there's always good and bad, right? We expanded audiences and we had like over 2 million people. We've expanded our own registration database to over 1,100,000. So that was like a roller coaster. But at the same time, I agree with you. It's kind of it's enough is enough, right? It's time to meet, to hack, and to start dreaming together and in person. So yeah, hopefully sooner than later, but whatever it is, we're all prepared. We've seen the virtual show being greatly used by many of our partners, from UN to governments. So we are delighted that we've added that layer of inclusion for people who cannot travel or others. But that's the digital age. Now, could you please define what is your we're talking obviously about smart farming. What is the smart farming? What are the benefits from it? What are the challenges that stay in front of opening the way to it for what's your strategies to deal with them. So all this like overall understanding, and just for all our audience, which are one of the most fascinating digerati from all around the world. Obviously, farming itself is one of the polluters, and at the same time, the thing that we cannot do without. We need food, and definitely there's so much space to improve, and that's what we are going to be talking about with our commitment to the SDGs Goal 2030, and of course, you will hear now from Dragoş where in this area we are heading. So please, Dragoş.
Thank you, Plamen. And it's interesting that we are starting this conversation from this particular topic, AI and farming, AI in agriculture. It's true that I've posted this tweet that you mentioned as a result of the latest hearings that we organized in AIDA.
We follow you, so there's nothing hidden.
Exactly, our special committee on AI, which we did jointly with Agri. Because this issue of smart farming, as you rightly call it, is something that, and I think it's important to start from that, is something that is already very much present in the days and lives of some of our farmers. So we already have digital technologies underpinning the way agriculture, the way farming is being done today, starting from drones, starting from sensors that are telling farmers when and how to deploy inputs in their agricultural crops and production, telling them when and how to use and distribute pesticides, how to keep parasites under control, how to optimize water consumption, so on and so forth. So there is a broad range already of activities in the farming sector that are being helped, that are being facilitated by modern technologies and by digital technologies. But clearly, at least this is something that we discussed in this latest hearing, the potential is far greater when we are thinking at deploying artificial intelligence. And we can actually even picture a future where we bring the farmer and the consumer closer together by combining artificial intelligence algorithms, some of these digital technologies that I mentioned earlier, but also with, for example, consumption data, or with Internet of Things, to a point where we can even think how my personal tastes as a consumer can actually be served directly by the farmer in the way he or she is organizing the crops, and then organizing also the delivery chain all the way to my plate. So again, AI as such has a great potential. It can be used to optimize the way agriculture is done, and also, again, the way the output of farming reaches consumers. But we also need to be mindful, and you yourself are mentioning the challenges, we also have to be mindful of what these challenges are, and certainly also we have to be mindful of what the impact is. Because certainly for us here in Europe, we are not indifferent in terms of how we allow our farming, our agriculture to evolve. We need to be always keep in mind the impact on environment, the impact on the health of our soil. And therefore, again, when we imagine all of these bright digital future for our farming, we have to stay abreast with these challenges. And since I was referring to this hearing that we just had a couple of days ago, we addressed some of these challenges. We've heard how access to these technologies is an issue for many of the farmers. There are smaller farmers, there are small enterprises, agricultural enterprises that would not have the same access to digital high-tech technologies, just like big farms, for example. Then we heard challenges linked to education and to upskilling that farmers would need to go through in order to be able to then properly use and deploy these technologies. And clearly, I mentioned earlier, there is the issue of impact of such smart farming, as we call it, on the actual environment and on the resilience of our agricultural sector for the future. So a lot of elements in there which show a potential for the future, but also show very clearly how we need to signpost with proper rules and with proper safeguards to make sure that this is something that remains sustainable.
Thank you, Dragoş. Since you've mentioned threats, would you mind if we talk about what are the environmental threats in increasing agricultural production with the help of AI and other innovative technologies, and how those threats can be overcome?
I think there are at least two conversations here. The first one is linked, and this is a bit broader than agriculture in itself. It's linked to the environmental footprint of artificial intelligence and of digital technologies in general. Again, this is a topic that concerns us a lot here in the European Parliament. We've also had dedicated hearings to that, to the impact of artificial intelligence on our Green Deal commitments here in the European Union, because clearly artificial intelligence has an impact on, again, our environmental targets. It can have a positive impact because you can optimize a lot in the consumption of our energy supplies, in our water supplies, in our electricity grids, in our public utility sectors. So AI can be used for good in that respect, also in helping environment and in helping us to reach our targets. But at the same time, AI clearly has a footprint in itself. The more AI, the more data. The more data, it means we need to factor in what is the environmental impact of big data farms, which would be necessary to process the amount of data that AI would be consuming. And we need to see what is the carbon footprint of such AI farming. Also, what is the energy consumption for all of these immense data flows that we will have to facilitate in the future if we really want to build AI so intrinsically into how we are evolving our societies and economies. So this is the one, let's say, one conversation, which is not only linked to agriculture. When it comes to agriculture, AI, as I was saying earlier, clearly can help optimize production, can help optimize how farms are being organized and how supply chains can be rethought. But at the same time, we don't want intensive agriculture that, again, is depleting our soils, that is having a negative impact on environment, on also the whole ecosystem around a farm. And there, I think we need to be very mindful of how AI algorithms can be built in the agriculture sector so that they take into account a broader set of objectives rather than just the optimization of the crop itself. Because what you can have a perfect algorithm that can tell you, using sensors, using drones, using whatever other technologies that can help you and tell you how to optimize your crop. But at the same time, that very technology can also impact bees, for example, or other essential elements of the ecosystem around our agriculture sector. So all this tells us that the potential negative impact on the environment is there. And again, in the way we would be developing and deploying artificial intelligence in this sector, we need to stay and pay particular attention to what this impact is.
Thank you so much, Dragoş. Definitely, I would like to talk about the risks and opportunities of AI in general from your point of view, and the challenges to stay in front of developing AI according to democratic values and privacy. We will continue our discussion also in terms of cybersecurity and how the innovation ecosystem and business infrastructure affects security. But that's after the break.
The Virtual Show, the only one-stop shop event virtualization platform, bringing together hundreds of thousands of people by virtualizing human interactions. Fully customizable lobbies, conference halls, exhibitions, networking lounges with one-to-one, one-to-many meetings, group workshops, resources, help desks, and so much more, such as unparalleled content production like no other in the world. The Virtual Show. Transform your virtual experience today.
This program is powered by the Virtual.show, making your offline events virtual.
Hello and welcome back. We are with Mr. Dragoş Tudorache, Chair of AIDA, the Artificial Intelligence in Digital Age. And we shall be discussing in the second part questions around the risks of AI in general, and of course opportunities, but also risks in terms of security, in terms of our own privacy, and where and how the European innovation and startup ecosystems can be empowered in order to bring positive influence and change in society and economy. Dragoş, back to you. What are the risks and opportunities of AI in general as per your taking, and what are the challenges that stay in front of developing AI according to democratic values and privacy?
Well, Plamen, I will start exactly from your from the last sequence in your question, which is democratic values and privacy. And if you'd asked me to create a scale, my own personal scale of risks, I would start with this, with the risk that AI would be either developed or used for non-democratic ends. Because we have already examples in the world that AI can be already from the beginning developed with the idea in mind of, for example, surveying your citizens or controlling and predicting behavior, social behavior, or other types of behavior in society for citizens. And clearly, according to our set of values, this is not AI being used democratically. And AI as a technology is very powerful. We know it can accelerate processes, particularly in terms of how it amasses and it deals with large amounts of data. And it is enough, again, to look at models around the world where it is being misused, and that is an alarm, a signal that we have to be very mindful of. It can also be used for fake news. It can also be used for disinformation. It can be used for cyber attacks. So again, in terms of risks, AI, as I would dare say, any technology which by itself is neutral and depends in the hands that are using it, AI also is a tool that can be used for bad, for harm. And that's something that we have to be careful of. And if we only look at what happens these days, we can look at the discussions at the transatlantic level between the EU and the US. We saw the discussions at G7 level. We saw the discussions at NATO level. And we can see how digital technologies, the digital transformation in general, and artificial intelligence are becoming a very strategic part of this conversation. And it's not by accident. It is because of this potential that is being clearly identified as possibly undermining democratic values and the need to create a democratic model of how technology is used. Then my second category of risks goes into how AI, which I think we all agree by now, is going to shape the way our societies will evolve in the future, how AI should be used to allow for this transformation to turn us into a better society. We know that we have the physical society of today carrying over a lot of prejudices, a lot of biases, which are built into historically our way of being and the way our society has grown, from social disparities and prejudices to gender prejudices to prejudices based on ethnicity, so on and so forth. If we are not careful, if we do not set clear rules on how existing data sets, for example, which may have biases already creeped into them, and if we are not paying attention on how these data sets are, for example, being used in the development and the deployment of algorithms, then what we would do is we would simply carry over the biases from today's physical world into tomorrow's digital world. And that's something that we, I'm sure, those again that are driven by democratic values and we have the interests of our citizen at heart, we don't want that. So again, this is a second A second category of risks, and this is where the whole human-centric approach that we are promoting at the EU level goes, to make sure that, again, AI applications, AI development and deployment is being done and will in the future evolve in a way where biases are dealt with as much as possible. But I think we also need to look at the opportunities, because all this discussion of risks should not in any way, from my point of view, bring a shadow of doubt as to the actual potential and already many of them concrete benefits that artificial intelligence brings into our lives. And I think by now, everywhere we turn, whether we know, whether we are aware of it or not, AI is already helping our lives. From the medical sector all the way to public utilities, I was mentioning earlier as well, there is a piece of algorithm intelligence in there that is helping humans, and I underline this, because this technology is there not to replace humans, but to actually help humans in the decisions, in the activities that they do. AI can help a doctor have a better diagnosis, sifting through millions and millions of data that otherwise a human being would not be able to perform, just as it will help a lawyer, just as it would help a clerk having to handle massive amount of data to be able to produce an outcome that is there to help citizens. So again, there are many potential and actual benefits that AI brings, and we have to keep that at heart when we look at how this digital future of ours is shaping up.
You don't need to convince our audience, Dragoş, because they're one of the leading digerati around the world. So definitely, these are the knots that connect us. The question is really how we deal with the threats, right? Because we are so excited that sometimes we basically forget that at the end of the day, it's technology to make us happier, not technology to make us having challenges with our privacy, with our security. And we are well aware of the fact that it's a huge threat for security, that there are already algorithms going out there being unleashed, and services are trying to locate them or to deal with them. So is cybersecurity developed enough in order to manage the needs of this upgrowing digital power? What is your take on that?
It's a big no. By far, we have not managed to put sufficient cybersecurity guarantees, tools, mechanisms, responses for how big the challenge of cybersecurity is. I'm happy, in fact, that I feel that now I think there is a growing awareness, a growing awakening taking place both at national level, but also at EU level, in the US as well, at NATO level, because it's not only the way cyber criminals act these days, because clearly with all of our lives moving into the virtual space, also the life of criminals and the activity of criminals is moving with us in the cyberspace. And we have to be and we have to be aware of it clearly, and we have to have responses for it. So, but beyond this issue of criminal activity in itself and cyber criminality, which needs to also have a cyber response, and we need to think of how we equip our law enforcement with the right tools to be able to protect us, and also with the right rules to be able to protect us from this harm. There is also a more strategic element to this conversation. We need to be very careful on how we develop and how we protect our critical infrastructure. A lot of it right now very much dependent on digital technology. And it's enough to look only if we look back for the last couple of weeks, we saw cyber attacks in the health sector, cyber attacks against hospitals.
Yes,
we saw cyber attacks against electricity grids. We saw cyber attacks really undermining the fundamentals of how states functions and how our economies and our societies function. And again, this issue of securing digital infrastructure, critical infrastructure from physical ones, cables, undersea cables, land cables, to how we secure the 5G network that we are all trying to build. All of these are essential elements that we need to put at the heart of our political and legislative priorities. And there are two things that are also essential in this conversation. We need to think of cybersecurity for all and cybersecurity with all. What do I mean with that? Cybersecurity is not only for critical entities. Sometimes I see this mistake being done in the way people perceive the need to address cybersecurity. No, cybersecurity is also essential for startups, for small enterprises that may be developing certain tools and certain algorithms or certain services, digital services for the consumer, and who may be as prone to being attacked as big entities. So again, when we think at the environment of cybersecurity, we need to include all of those that are providing digital services for the consumers, because they are all potential victims, subjects to attacks. And when I say cybersecurity with all, I mean that we need to involve all of the institutional landscape that need to be part of this. We need to create a governance at national level and at EU level that is bringing everyone well aware and well equipped to deal with cybersecurity and to deal with the challenge of cybersecurity.
Thank you so much, Dragoş. Time is really running up, and there are many questions to be asked. But we have this tradition, I would say, already, and traditions are to be kept, to ask one and the same question, all of our already hundreds of participants here at WEBIT Virtual. And the question is, what are your predictions for the next decade? And where do you see, what are the main trends that you will be most probably following and you expect to make the biggest impact?
Well, I mentioned a bit of it already in one of my previous replies. I would say that if I look 10 years from now or 15 years from now, I see digital, AI as part of it, but digital more broadly as becoming the new stage for the global power shifts and for the global power contest, not to say for the future warfare. Because I do think that the big global competition will be building over the coming years more and more around digital. I mentioned earlier the conversations that are taking place right now along the transatlantic relationship, but it's not only about that. It is going to be a contest between models and how we shape the digital rules of tomorrow. We have the United States now together with the EU, who are asking for an alliance of digital democracies, as the US administration likes to call it. And clearly this model, which will require setting standards, setting rules for how our digital realm will look like, will come in collision with a different worldview. With a different worldview that is also going to use digital as a tool and sometimes also as a weapon. So again, for me, I would rank this as one of the key evolutions that concern me looking 10 and 15 years from now. The second one would be the impact of AI and digital on the states and on the organization of states themselves. Because the more services will be delivered digitally, the more all of this digital world is in the hands of private sectors, and it's good that it's like that. But then it means that governments themselves, states themselves, need to learn to become platforms, because if they don't learn to become platforms by themselves in the way they provide services and they provide the essential monopolies of the state to the citizens, then we may come to a point where even in democratic societies, citizens will ask, what do I need a government for? If almost everything I need, I take from platforms and digital services that are not being provided by the state. So again, I think that the states and governments need to learn how to use technology, how to digitalize themselves in the way they interact with citizens, if they want to I would put proper quotation marks, survive, but basically to stay adapted to the needs of their subjects. And thirdly, I would say the immense increase that we will see over the coming years in the value of data. I'll say a truism. Everyone says it already. Data is the new everything, the new oil, the new gold, the new value. But the question is, who holds this value, and who then is able to capitalize on this value? And here, over the coming years, we will need to see how we bring to the citizen, to the individual who is actually generating a lot of this data. How do we bring that value back to the individual so that then the individual can play into this new capital market of data and is part of that market, and is dynamically using the portfolio of the data that he or she generates in a fashion that, again, brings possible some values to him or her, but also allows an interaction with all those providers of services. So I would rank these three as the key evolutions for the decade to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dragoş Tudorache, Chair of AIDA. True pleasure, Dragoş, to have you with us. And governments becoming platforms. Maybe this is the key takeaway from our discussion, and a very interesting challenge for the governments, for the European Union itself, becoming the platform for growing European ecosystem, talents, opportunities, above all, improving the state of well-being for the Europeans and hopefully the rest of the world, because it only makes sense if we have true impact over lives of everyone around the world. Thank you so much. True pleasure.
You're very welcome.
And looking forward to have you as part of our global WEBIT community and part of the challenging, interesting, inspiring discussions we're all having all around the year.
I will return with pleasure anytime you would have me. So thank you very much for today's conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you all, beautiful WEBIT community from all around the world, for being with us today. And of course, as usual, we might not be forever, but we are constant. And being constant comes with meeting you every Tuesday. So until our next meeting, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and always innovative. Thank you so much, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
This program is powered by the Virtual.show, making your offline events virtual.